Hi, I'm Tim from the Marathon Mates. And guess what? Tony's back from his European adventures, and there's a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to catch up on his journey around Europe, including the Amsterdam Marathon. We're also going to be talking about the things that we missed out on while Tony was away. Things like Cape Town and the blowing winds that ruined its opportunities to gain its coveted 8th star. We'll also talk a little bit about the Chicago and New York marathons, plus so much more. Now, we love running and we love sharing our adventures of running around the world. We are the only podcast out there with 4 7-star world marathon major runners. And we promise tonight is going to be a great episode as we talk about all those things that we've missed out on. But before we do any of that, let me introduce you to my co-hosts, obviously Tony, who's back. Welcome, Tony. Lucia, and also my better half, Tara. G'day, guys. How are you all going?
Hi, good, thank you.
It's good to have the gang back.
Yes, it's good to be all back in the one virtual room, so to speak. So it's good. And so much happened while I was away. And it's just been an incredible couple of weeks. So looking forward to this episode.
That's it. And now, how's everyone's weeks been? Firstly, how's parkrun and your long runs or any other runs that you've been doing? I might start with you first, Tony. How have you gone since you got back? When was it? Last Monday?
Last Monday night. So finally the jet lag gave way, or starting to feel like normal. We didn't run much after the marathon. I had a real, like I talk about a screaming Achilles all the time, but it was screaming, it was wailing, it was really just, it was horrible. So first run after the marathon was actually on Saturday, just gone, where Tim and I ran a very slow and peaceful 5K. But yeah, so that's been it for my running journey since the Amsterdam Marathon. It was good just to get away and enjoy myself and not have to think about how do I put my sweaty running clothes into my luggage and infect everything else.
Yeah, Ziploc bags. And Lucia, how's your week or last few weeks been with your running adventures?
Our listeners will be pleased to know I'm back. I'm back to my old tricks when it comes to my long runs. Last weekend, going through Centennial Park, the aim was to do anywhere between 12 and 13. I may or may not have stopped at the coffee caravan for a milkshake at the 8K mark. So I'm back to those tricks. But I've decided come 1st December, I've got to stop doing those tricks and get back into it. So yeah, no, it's been nice not having pressure. And I feel like I'm starting to enjoy my running after Sydney. And I finally went to the physio because I've had a hamstring issue for weeks before Sydney. So the shortened version was hamstring tendonitis. But after 2 physio visits, he's like, I don't need to see you anymore. I just got to do the exercises. So it was, I'm getting back to where I want to be. So very happy.
Excellent. And Tara, I know you've got a shirt on there that's something that our listeners don't know much about, I guess, but we did it, didn't we?
Well, they might know a little bit about it if they were listening to the earlier episodes. Tim and I finished our Run Down Under journey at the GC 50 race with a half marathon there. And we managed to finish our 14,080 kilometres of running around Australia at that race, which was very good. Nice finish. But yeah, you've been doing well though, Tim. I have been really slack with my running. I've been sort of getting up to about 13, 14 Ks on my weekend runs. I don't have anything to train for, so I'm sort of just trying to just keep some sort of fitness in this body at the moment. But yeah, apart from that, we're doing all right, I think.
And for me, yes, it's hot and muggy. Long runs are long runs for fun. I'm trying to find a little bit of speed myself, just to have a little bit of fun with speed at the moment. Not training for anything, but just having some fun with speed and just back to that usual long run half marathon on a Sunday type scenario. So that's my plan. Lucia, were you going to say something?
Sorry, can we just clarify one thing just for our listeners? And we know I like to go a bit off the beaten track. We mean speed in pace, not speed in drugs. That's what Tim's referring to, people. So let's not all panic. Tim is not a drug take. He's talking about speed in pace. Just want to clarify that.
Yeah, definitely not on speed. I would lose my job if I was on speed and my career, but that's a different story. No, definitely just pace, increasing the pace. Now, the other thing on our last episode last week that came out last week where we talked about improving your pace, at the end of it, we introduced, we said that we'd be having a special guest on this week. Unfortunately, Sharon hasn't been able to join us this week for the show. She's had some family commitments come up. So for all our listeners who were tuning in this week to have a listen to Sharon, you'll just have to wait 2 more weeks and she'll be back on to talk about her running journey. So that's about all from us to start with. But now I'm going to flick it over to that time of the week when we talk about the news. Tony, what's been happening around the world this week?
That's right. It's me, isn't it? Well, I just went blank there. I'm sorry. So
Tony's out of touch with what he's supposed to be doing. It's been too long since he's done it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's. What's been too much has been happening around the world. So Tim once again has just given me a heap of stuff to walk through. But Kipchoge, as we know, Eliud Kipchoge ran in New York recently. And there was all this big suspense leading into New York on what Kipchoge was going to do next. And there was going to be a big announcement. And he kept saying, let's wait until after the marathon. And we all patiently waited till after the marathon. And there are some big news. He's going to run 7 marathons in 7 continents over 2 years. So following his run at New York, he's launched the Eliud Running World website, where he's released his next journey. Now, Eliud's been talking since Sydney around the joy of running and being, like the global ambassador for running. And I think that is absolutely awesome. But the world website is all about running 7 marathons on 7 continents over the next 2 years to raise funds for causes he believes in, even as he continues to race at the elite level. So it's really quite unprecedented what Kipchoge is trying to do. So the project aims to inspire the world to become a running world while raising funds for the Eliud Kipchoge Foundation in support of education and environment causes worldwide. So he's recently turned 21 and he said that his globe trotting project will let him complete
41.
41. Did I say 41?
No, you said
21.
Yeah.
Well,
that's all right. Nobody ages after 21, so it's okay. We're all
okay. So Kipchoge recently turned 41. Sorry, let me just... I'm in 2 minds. I think I'll leave that in because I think our listeners will get a laugh. So, and he said in a statement that his globetrotting project will let him compete not only for records but for the people. I want to continue to push myself to run at my best, but I also want to inspire, give back, and remind everyone that no human is limited. His website lists all 7 continents with races and dates for each still to be confirmed. There will be a race here in Australia, and at some stage it will be announced when and where it will be held. So that's pretty exciting. What do you guys think about the new Eliud Kipchoge? Sort of, just running for the joy of it. Thoughts? Bleach, I'll start with you.
I think it's great because it just proves the passion he's got to really help people get passionate about running and to leave his footprint on the community. And he's just so humble with everything that he's achieved. He could retire quietly, but he's like, no, I want to keep going. I want to ensure that more people get the love for it. So I think it's great.
Tara?
Yeah, look, you have a look at what the reaction to him coming to Sydney was and the people that were going past him, or he was going past, on one of the dogleg beds. And you look at those people and they were running quite fast. They were like in the sub 3 hour type running, and they were actually stopping to take photos of them. Now, if you're that elite of a runner yourself, or you can run that sort of speed yourself, and you're stopping to watch him, imagine how the back of Packers feel as well. So he's inspiring everybody, the fast, the slow. He's a great thing for the running sport and the community.
And Tim, I guess, are you interested in traveling and running some of these races with the goat?
Well, I am, but the question is this going to be the new world major marathons? There's 7 of them in 7 different continents. Is he going into competition with Abbott's maybe? Because there will be people out there who will try and run all 7 in all of the 7 continents and do them all with him. There will be people who are trying to set records or whatever. Like the fastest marathon ever ran in Antarctica, I think, is 2 hours and 14 minutes. Don't quote me, but and maybe 2 hours 34 minutes, somewhere around that mark. But the question is, will Eliud go out there to try and set the fastest time ever run in Antarctica? I'm willing to bet there will be people out there signing up for every one of these races and traveling around the world and turning it into the next one. It'll be interesting if he has some form of competition in there, that if you compete in all 7, do you get another medal or something like that? I'm not sure. It is a fundraising event. It is designed to raise money for his charity, and his foundation will make a lot of money out of this. I'm actually quite interested to find out where he's going to be doing it. They class it as Oceania, but I would say that it will be held in Australia. I'm just trying to imagine where he could run it. Maybe we campaign for it to be out of Uluru at the Great Australian Outback Marathon.
Yeah, interesting. 2:38 is the record currently for Antarctica. Yep. So it was 2:53. So held by a gentleman called William Maunsell from Ireland, of all places. So there we go. Wasn't there that group that promoted Kipchoge on the front page?
There was.
Yeah, I've forgotten that.
Yeah, sorry, Tony. I think, was it a 10K race or something in Thailand? I've got Thailand in my head, but I don't know why. Like, they did this big promotion, and then all of a sudden it's gone quiet, because he's also released his own training platform as well.
Yeah, he is sponsored by Thailand and Tourism Thailand. But yeah, he did have one. I think it was for half marathons or marathon distance or 10K distance around Asian cities.
Yeah.
Super Series or something, I think it was called. We talked about it a number of episodes ago.
Yeah,
we did.
Really a ton of it.
Yeah, and we haven't heard that kick on at all. And I remember it sort of was a little bit the horse before the cart, so to speak, because they were asking for races to apply for it. So, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And I suppose more information will come to hand.
Will you do it, Tony? Will you run a couple of them?
No. I'm taking a break from marathon, so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through.
Never say never. Wait till you see the medals.
They still give medals for 10K. So, all right. So, New York City Marathon, what a day it was. A new world record. And we've been sort of having a bit of fun with this, because it seems like they're all putting their hand up, Berlin, London, New York, to see on any given day which one can break the record. And New York did it again. So this year's race broke the world record for most finishes in a marathon with over 59,226. Why do we say over 59,226? Because 59,226 seems a very specific number. So is it that number, or is it over that number?
There's probably finishers who finished that didn't actually have their bibs on them, maybe. I don't know. That's how it was written when I copied and pasted it into here.
I've always found it interesting, over 60 shops in a shopping centre. What, you got bored from counting at 60 or what? So, over 10, this year's race broke the record. So this historic number was reached thanks to 2 growing demographics in distance running, people younger than 30 and people older than 60. The largest age bracket in the New York City Marathon was 25 to 29, with nearly 11,000 from that cohort alone, more than 1,000 above any other 5-year range. The shift towards younger runners in recent years has been dramatic. In 2022, just 17% of all finishes at the NYC Marathon were under 30, but in 2025, that was up to 24%. The trend goes back further to, in total, 86% more men, 91% more women aged 18 to 29 finished the 2025 race, compared with a decade ago in 2015. That's pretty impressive. But the one that I'm more impressed about is, although the raw number of older folks running is much smaller, the growth of that group has been equally great, with 88% more 60-plus runners completing the New York Marathon in 2025 as did in 2015. Older women have been the fastest growing demographic on the course, with 159% more women in their 60s running than did 10 years ago, and 250% more women in their 70s. Now, that's amazing. That's amazing. Huge. This is huge. All things we've been seeing and saying over the last year or two about increasing field sizes, largely because of younger runners and also older runners. So there's positives to this, of course. More people are running, but do we see negatives? Do we see fields growing? Do we continue to see some races trying to one up each other? Starting again with Luch, what are your thoughts?
I think what this proves is how popular running is getting, and how tougher it's going to be getting into races now, because something which got announced, I think it was today, that the Melbourne Marathon, that their entry system is going to be via ballot this year. So it won't be first come, first served, how it's always been, and it's going to be a ballot. So it just proves that all the races are getting tougher to get into because it's getting so popular. But it's great at the same time.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because we were looking at Manchester for 2027. And once again, it's now under ballot. It used to be first come, first served, and now they've gone to ballot. So, Tara, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm all for anybody starting up a sport and getting exercise and being fit and healthy. Absolutely. I get a little bit annoyed, though, when people sign up to these races, then don't use the actual race entry. Even if they've paid the money, sometimes they're just they'll go out and they just won't train, but then don't sell it. So if you are going to actually sign up for it, just on-sell it again. Most of the race organisers will actually buy it back from you to resell back. So I like the idea, though, that there is a lot of younger people getting into sport and into running in general. We have become a bit of a lazy society, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. So it's nice to actually see that since COVID, we're actually out exercising again.
And Tim?
Yeah, I think it puts the pressure back onto organisers to find more spots in their fields. I think when I think back to New York, and I was just thinking about it then while Tara and Lucia were speaking, I think New York's easily got room to fit another 10 or 15,000 on that course. They have multiple zones that start at the same time. I think it's three waves that start pretty much at the same time and go on different, or maybe it's two, top and bottom deck. And then there's left and right side of the bridges as well that you run on the Verrazano Narrows. But once you get past that, the course is actually quite wide. And the thing, I guess, that holds them back the most is traffic closures and road closures and deadlines associated with those. But when I think back to London, there's a couple of narrow sections on around Canary Wharf area there just before you come into Canary Wharf.
And Cuddy Sark.
Yeah, and around the Cuddy Sark. But generally, that could probably handle a little bit more. Berlin is wide streets and wide boulevards. It could handle more. Sydney could probably handle a little bit more if they could sort out North Sydney Oval a little bit better and get people in there earlier or whatever, because we found there was a lot of people waiting outside before they could go in for their entries. But I'm sure they've got ways to be able to do it. The point with Sydney is not the course or the starting point. It's really the finishing point, the bottleneck at the finish line there, and somehow finding a way to move people out of that area more quicker. But I think all these courses and all these race directors do need to find a way to do things, find ways for more runners coming in, because it's not just a unique thing. It's not just something new. It is only going to keep growing. I was only looking at the news today and they were talking about the Bondi Running Club, and you're probably familiar with this, Lucia, and they're getting 500 or more people turning up on a Wednesday and a Friday morning just to go for a social run at 5 o'clock in the morning.
It's ridiculous.
And to the point where locals are getting pissed off with it because there's so many people there running. So it's that popular. The sport is that popular. There's a lot of people out there getting into it.
And just a side note on New York, a good friend of the podcast, Marianne, she did it with her sister, and they started in different points, but they ran into each other at the halfway, and they did the second half of the course together.
And it was nice, to see Melody and Marianne just finish together. It was awesome. Yep.
Out of the 59,226 people, they managed to find each other at the halfway point.
Yeah, over.
Oh, sorry, over
226 people. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's great news. And but with Berlin, I think there was the last 2 years we've seen a lot of complaints. But I tend to agree with you, Tim. When we ran Berlin, the course didn't seem overly crowded. But the last 2 years, we've seen a lot more people complain about the crowds at Berlin. So. Yeah. I don't know if they really do have that capacity, but who knows? So just the last piece of news, and it's a great piece of news. And we've just finished talking about older women and the growing demographic, but one of our faves, Jen Kellett, who we've had on the show, episode 33, and I think we mention her probably on average once every 5 episodes. So this is your last mention for the next 5 episodes, Jen. But she competed in New York this year with the World Age Championships, and she came second in her age group, which is amazing, which is fantastic. Now, so technically, she's the second best in the world for her age group. But we actually think she's number 1. So well done, Jen. A massive shout out and congratulations on another awesome run. And she's just following her socials. She's such a humble human being that just loves running. So love what you do, Jen. So keep it up. And Tim, that's the news.
Thanks, Tony. And on top of that, she makes a good gin as well, which Tara and I were into. All right. Thanks, Tony. Okay. We're now going to catch up a little bit about what's been happening over the last few weeks in the world of running. And we're going to start with Tony, who's going to do a bit of a recap on his experiences in Amsterdam. Now, I know Tony's just done a recap on his Out and Back, on the Out and Back episodes that was dropped yesterday, or on Sunday, just been.
Yeah.
But I know that recap focused purely on the race and purely around the cutoffs and how you beat the cutoffs. So I guess what we would like to hear about is the things that we love to hear about, which is things like the Expo and the merchandise and the Saturday experience with all the other running that was going on, and a little bit about your marathon as well. And also how how Sharon's pulled up as well after the trouble she went through as well. So
all right, so so the Out and Back episode was more about whether the Amsterdam Marathon is suitable for back of the pack runners, because as I'm running it, and there was lots of thoughts going through my head as I was running it. It's fast, it's flat, and I won't go too much into detail around that. Because people can tune into the Out and Back episode. But is it a suitable race for back of the pack runners? Or, and I guess part of my thought was at Sydney this year, because we had the 7-hour cutoff, we know a lot of people, and myself included, who probably weren't where we needed to be in terms of fitness or training to actually complete the race feeling good and feeling strong. And so when I was comparing my Sydney experience with my Amsterdam experience, the reality is that you need to know what you're in for with Amsterdam. Hence the reason why I put out is Amsterdam really a good race for back of the pack runners? Tune in, find out what my summary of that was. So let's talk about my experience. There's also a blog post on our website talking about my experience at Amsterdam. And thank you for everyone that's already read it. It's already our highest read article on the website. So thank you for that. But a couple of things, right? A little bit of fun. We know Lucia shows up early to expos. She doesn't show up as early as us. We showed up 2 hours before it opened. So beat that one, Lucia.
Challenge is on.
So the Expo opened at 1 p.m. on the Thursday, and we were there at 11. So, which brings me to my next piece of advice: make sure you read the event guide. So clearly stated, Expo opens at 1. I did not read the event guide, thinking it was 11. Right. Expo was really good, guys. It was really, really a positive Expo. There were issues with bib collection when we were there, so we were the first. Obviously, we went and had some lunch, and then we were one in the first wave of people going through. And they keep it in waves, which I found really interesting coming into the Expo. But there was bib collection issues, as in not enough volunteers, so they lined you up under your numbers. The only drama with that was that there was no volunteer on that line to actually give you your bib. So some lines were moving, other lines were not. But on Saturday, the final day of the Expo, there was like a 2-hour wait. The line went out of the convention centre in 2 ways. One, you had to pick up your bib, and then you had to go back and line up to grab your T-shirt. So they certainly had some teething problems and some bottlenecks in relation to the increased crowd that we saw this year. So, but overall, I thought the Expo was good. The Mizuno merch range looked really effective. For those watching on the video, I bought a lovely little running shirt. I like it. As well as the race has got like an embedded design of the course underneath it. So it looks red on screen, but it's actually, when you're up close, you can see the design that's sort of deep in there. So I liked it. It probably just looks like dirt.
Can't see it. Yeah, you can't see it.
So it's subtle, right? So, but the race shirt was really cool. The Mizuno stuff was really cool. They had a testing zone for their new prototype super shoe. Luch, you would have loved it. You walk in, there's a treadmill. They've got all the different sizes, and there's people running on treadmills testing the prototype of their new super shoe. So it was really, I've never seen that in an Expo, and I thought that was pretty unique. And also Luxembourg Night Marathon were there, and they were selling off some of their old race shirts. So I picked up a bargain from the 2017 Luxembourg Night Marathon. And I liked it because the thing it said on the back was kick ass fault, right? So I thought, oh, that's a pretty cool thing. And the one that I got didn't say that. So, but anyway, it was €5, so it was a bargain, right? So that was the Expo, right? So the Expo
didn't you check before you put it in the bag?
No, it was sealed. I wasn't going to open it again. So, but it's still a cool saying on the back. I just can't remember what it is now, right? So the Expo was awesome. Saturday, I think Tara was saying there was far too many races, but the atmosphere on Saturday was awesome. My son ran the 7.5K, which is predominantly around the 1928 Olympic Stadium, and into Vondel Park. And we caught up with him. We went and saw him as he's come across a canal bridge, and then we raced him back primarily so we could see him finish in the Olympic Stadium. Lots of vibe, lots of great energy around the stadium. Yes, the Saturday was great. It was really good. The only downside to Saturday was, as you can imagine, with some cobblestone streets and a country that's, without the canals would be submerged by water. There's some bumps in the road, and I'd sort of tripped on one of those bumps and sort of aggravated my Achilles, which up until then had been feeling really good. So anyway, the Saturday before I knocked my Achilles, and it wasn't great. So, but yeah, Saturday, probably the only thing I'd say about Saturday was that the starting zones was outside of the Olympic Stadium, and they weren't as well signed as what they could have been. And so, with the crowds, I think there was 15,000 that ran the 7.5K. So that's still a lot of people to channel into what is primarily a main road. And when the waves weren't, signed effectively, it was hard to actually, even though the starting diagram in the event guide was very clear on where you had to go, it's still nice to see someone there holding up orange wave or something, just as a confirmation. So, and the other thing, guys, open they had urinals, which is awesome, men's urinals, except let's just put them on the footpath, or let's just put them out in the open. So it's a European thing. You just piss in the open, right? So it was quite confronting when we're walking in and you see all of that. But anyway, that's the positive is urinals, and the maybe not so positive is
Urinals.
the urinals. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about Sunday. So I'll just go back before I go into Sunday in some depth, just about the course. One of the races that was as part of the weekend is what they call the mini marathon. I think it's a 2K for kids, and that is actually held along the stretch of the River Amstel in that loop, that 12K loop where you're running along the River Amstel and then coming back. And what that does is there's actually some thought around this. Is what that does is creates crowds where that is on the River Amstel. So I thought that's pretty clever and pretty smart. The problem is that with that particular loop, once you've gone past that zone where the mini marathon was held, you've still got families there. They're cheering people on. There's a drink zone, all that sort of stuff. It does become very, very sparse. So, but at least they've sort of thought about that and they've tried to generate that interest. So Sunday morning, we started inside the stadium. We had a 9:17 start. We crossed the start line at 9:25, and thank God we did. And I'll once again go into my out and back episode. You'll understand why I said that. But the atmosphere inside, once again, open urinals down in front of the stand. So that was nice for people to watch down on really interesting stuff. But the music's pumping. There's big screens everywhere. It's just energy the minute you get into the stadium, into your wave. Also, finishing back at the stadium was just awesome. It's just an incredible feeling to do that. But the course itself, so let's get into the course. There's 2 times you go through the Vondel Park, and Vondel Park, the atmosphere in the Vondel Park was close to the best crowd atmosphere in any of the majors, right? Any of the majors.
That's a big call.
It is. It's huge. And especially when you're coming back, like when you leave the stadium, Vondel Park's about 2K into the race. So it's still early days. You're still living by the excitement of what you felt as you've come out of the stadium. But when you're coming back, it's in those final kilometers. So that crowd just lifts you. I have never heard said more in any of my time running majors, people going, Tony, 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 Tony. And needless to say, Sharon was really annoyed when I told her all that but the crowd at Vondel Park. So if you're going to run Amsterdam, the crowd at Vondel Park seriously is one of the best things. So you kick off from the stadium, you run through Vondel Park. Your next highlight is running through the Rijksmuseum. And this is an amazing experience. You're running through a museum. You've got a symphony orchestra. Yeah, that's it. You've got a symphony orchestra playing as you're running through. You can see into the various parts of the museum, all the fine arts and everything, Rembrandt and all that sort of stuff. So it's really quite an experience to run through that. And then you run through various parts of the city. So Sharon pulled out at the 6K mark, as you guys know, but I don't know if our listeners know. And the minute she ran, the first time she knew she was in more trouble than what she thought is, we only made it 100 meters outside of the Olympic Stadium at the start before she had to stop because of her breathing. So she made the right call to pull out at 6, because we got a message from our son saying, I'll see you at the 6K mark. And Sharon turned to me, she said, I'll be pulling out then. So it was disappointing, but she made the right call, and disappointing for me because then I had to continue by myself. So you run through, some of the Zuidas business district, which is, you could have been anywhere in the world, to be honest. And then you hit the Amstel River stretch. And this is a bit of a highlight, but it's also a bit of what I would call a heartbreak, because as you're running out, it's beautiful. You're running past windmills, stately homes, there's crowds there, et cetera, et cetera. They do those jet pilot things on the river, those where people are on a jetpack and going all over the place. So there's a lot to see and do on the way out. But it's almost like the minute you hit the turnaround point, which is the bridge over the river, and you come back, the other side is like farmland and sparse, and the people are less there. And of course, I'm one of the back of the packers, and the running crowd is not so great. So it does become very challenging. You pass the halfway mark on the way back to the course proper, what I'll call the course proper. But yeah, really, really tough, that segment. Now, the 25K mark is completing the River Amstel leg, and the 25K mark is really, really important for back of the pack runners. And the reality for me is I hit the 25K mark at 3:31. Now, if I had started back further, I would have been in trouble, because if I was in one of those last groups, you've got to do 25 in 3:30. And I was 1 minute over. So it's a good thing that I started early, because otherwise I would have been in trouble with the sweep vehicles. And I saw the sweep vehicles, as I'm coming back, and you could see them on the other side of the river. So those first 5 cutoffs to 25K are really, really serious. But you then hit a spit of what I called the industrial wasteland. So you come off the River Amstel into like an industrial estate or a commercial estate, and there is no one there. So once again, you've come on a really lonely stretch of the river onto a really lonely stretch of the run itself, and before you start heading back into more populated, crowded areas from about 30K. The 21, the half marathoners kicked off at 1:20 on the course proper. So by the time they reached me, I was about the 30K mark. And they're at like the 8K mark. So vast difference in pace and energy. And this is where it gets a bit tricky, because you've got a dual pace race then from then on in. You've got fast half marathoners flooding through, and then you've got the slower back of the pack runners that are struggling through. So I've never been bumped or jostled as much as what I was in the Amsterdam Marathon. So
yeah, that's pretty poor form. I listened to you on your on the Out and Back say that as well, that you're physically handled by some of the runners as you're coming through that area.
As I'm coming down to the Olympic Stadium, right? So there's a big stretch. You leave Vondel Park, and there's a big, primarily a straight that leads you to a couple of turns to get into the stadium. And there were people that had collapsed on the right-hand side of that road, and they were being attended to by medical experts. I'm staying as far right as I can with that happening, and some guy grabbed me and pushed me to the left so that he could squeeze through this minuscule gap between me and some guy being worked on the side of the road, just so that he could, I'm presuming, hit his PB or whatever he was chasing. So, and
wow.
It was just incredible. I've never ever seen that level of irresponsibility on a running track. So I'm big enough, ugly enough to deal with it. I called him an appropriate name as he did that, and then I just kept going. So, but yeah, finishing inside the stadium was awesome. There's more positives than negatives around Amsterdam. I'd certainly go and do it again, because I think that if you really do want to hit a PB, it's probably the race to do it. But if you are a back of the pack, and as I said, I go in a little bit more detail. I don't want to cover it again, but you really need to know what you're getting yourself in for. But it's a beautiful course. There's lots to see. The people of Amsterdam are generally friendly. So you do get some knobs that run the course, and you understand why. Everyone says it's a PB course. Go chase your PB. And then when they increase the crowd size to 30K, of course, there's going to be some hassles. And, I felt some of those hassles.
Yeah. Is it one that you would want to run, Lucia or Tara?
Amsterdam is a beautiful city, and knowing what, with what Tony has shared, and I do have to listen to the out and back, I'd be inclined to do it, but hopefully have an earlier start time just to give that little bit of a buffer.
Yeah, it was interesting. One of the girls, and I do it as a comparison on the episode. One of the girls that flying runner, she follows us, and we followed her on Instagram. There's a lady called Shan from the UK, and she was more the traditional back of the packer. So I started at 9:25. She started at 9:43, and it's so interesting to compare the strategies from both, because she did her first 5, for example, in 34 minutes, knowing that she needed to get some time up. But then the back end of that marathon, mine was so much faster than hers. So it's a really good comparison of me sneaking in early to an earlier time slot, and Shan staying where she was at a 9:43 start, and how she actually completed the marathon. So,
yeah. Tara, what about you? You like flat, fast courses?
Yeah, I'd like to try it. I think it would have to be one that I'd like to try running with you, though, Tim, because I would probably get distracted out if there was no other people around, and I'd be starting to look for dogs or something like that. So it is a course, from the sounds of things, that I would need somebody there to keep me on track with.
Yeah. Yep. Now, Tara, Tony, the most important thing, the medal. It looked pretty awesome. Was it an awesome medal?
loved the medal. We kept it very quiet, however, so just to keep the peace. But yeah, Sharon and I now have 16 marathons apiece. So as you know, she used to be very proud of the fact she had one more marathon than me. Well, you don't anymore, Sharon. So we are now level.
Yes. Not that matters.
No, you can say that because you're one up on me. So,
and there's no competition whatsoever, as you can tell. So
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Now, I'm also mindful of time, and there's a few other things we need to talk about. One is Cape Town. So thanks, Tony, for that. Now, as we all know, Cape Town was looking to be awarded the coveted 8th star this year. They were trying hard, and it looked like they had everything set up. Now, next week, we're going to have a lady called Sarah Coltrana come back onto the to the show. We had Sarah on previously, back on episode number 10, and we're going to get her on next week to talk about Cape Town, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But just quickly, guys, going around the table here, I'll start with you, Lucia. Did they do the right thing by stopping the race? It was blowing a gale in the morning, and there was objects blowing through the sky, including tents and signage and all sorts of things.
I think they did, because I was chatting with some people a few days later, and they would have had their guidelines as to at what point is it cancelled. So ultimately, while disappointing, they made the right decision, because just imagine if they had gone ahead, if something had happened, everyone would have said it's about the money, it's about the money, because that decision wouldn't have been made lightly. Like, I'm kind of grateful they weren't awarded, reason being because I'd actually paid travelling fee a deposit the night before for it. So I've decided
which is refundable if it's not an Abbott squad major, yeah?
Correct. And travelling fit, they came out a week later saying these are your options. So absolute credit to the guys there. So I was surprised. I thought they were going to get it, but I think by them doing what they did, it proves that it's not just about money. So credit to Abbott.
Yeah. Oh, the organisers of Cape Town, I think, more so than Abbott.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Now, Tara, do you think Abbott's have done the right thing? They're now awarding provisional stars for anyone who runs it next year. In case they become a major after that, those stars will count. And if they don't, then they don't.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's what they did with Sydney. Sydney was exactly the same. People got provisional stars last year for Sydney, and they were 7-star medalists before the rest of us on a provisional star. So I think it's only fair that that happens. A lot of people will be running it in, when is it, May next year, on the basis that they were going to be running it now, or just recently, for their 7th, for that provisional star type thing anyway. So yes, yep. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, just a reminder, but it was only the World Age Champs that got the provisional star last year for Sydney.
Oh, in Sydney, yes.
Yeah, and not everyone that ran it. So, yeah, look, I just on this, there was shock, I think, for so many people on the day of the marathon that Cape Town was called off. I think it was the right decision for everything that Luch went through. You could just imagine if they had run it and someone got hurt or the facilities weren't there. So there would have been so much more hell to pay. I thought it was a brave decision that they made. But it was good to see the feel and the vibe. Sarah was saying to me the Saturday races were spot on. Just the atmosphere was awesome. And there was so much to like. Not a big fan of the provisional stars for everyone, but I can understand why they're doing that. And I just think the comms that came out when the event was called off was a little bit contradictory initially. So I think the first lot of comms was no refunds, all that sort of stuff. And, most of us say, oh, well, yeah, okay, we can see that in the terms and conditions. But with the sponsor coming in, and I know, Tim, you've got this as a bullet point, the sponsor coming in and providing free entry for everyone that was affected this year, I think is such a bonus to everyone that was there. So now, interestingly, after the marathon weekend, I guess I've seen a lot of the influencers actually come out and talk so openly and positively about the Cape Town experience itself and the travel that they've done and what to see and and I think that that's a real positive as well. So they've got over the disappointment of not running the marathon, and then we're still able to sell some of the amazing things that people will see when they go to Cape Town.
So I guess one benefit as well, Tony, and I know that you're not a fan of it, whereas I am, but with the provisional star, it will actually free up that spots for later down the track. So less people are going to be trying to vie for the same spot later on down the track, like with Tokyo and stuff like that. We all know, Lucia, sorry, not you, but we, the other three of us, we know what it was like to have Tokyo cancelled a week out beforehand and then try and get back in and vie for spots for 3 years worth of missed racing. And it's not a guarantee that you're guaranteed a spot or a star. So at least with giving those provisional stars, they do that. And I do know that with them cancelling that race, there is a race here in Brisbane that is no longer running, and it was the Twilight Run. And one of those races, it was in September of about 5 or 6 years ago. One of the people actually got killed in that race because that race was not pulled in time, and a lightning storm came through and it actually killed one of the runners. Yeah. So that has ruined that race. So for the Cape Town one to have actually done the right thing by the safety of runners, yes, it's disappointing, but is it worth it not to have somebody killed on course from something that can be prevented? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I fully take on board everything you said and 100% agree. So, but in our world, in one of our favorite groups on Facebook is the World Major Challenge group run by Robert Wayne. There's been a little bit of fun on will we see in the future people saying, well, mine's a real star while you got yours as just a provisional. And I'm thinking, there probably will be some people that say that. So you haven't done a major unless you've done it in under 4 hours or something. Well,
you've still got to run the same course, and I don't have an issue with provisional stars. So just quickly going around the table because we are short on time. As you said, Sandlam, who's the major sponsor, is awarding all entrants this year who entered this year. They get free entry for either next year or the year after. Quickly around the table, Lucia, would you go into next year or the year after? 25, 26 or 27?
I'm saying 27 because for me, I would want to run it when it's a major, like it was with Sydney this year.
Tara?
Yeah, I'm with Lucia.
And Tony?
I couldn't tell you, to be honest. I'd probably want to run it the very first year that it's available again. So.
Yeah, I think 2027 is going to be massive, I think, and it'll be very difficult to get in. So, All right, now switching over to New York. We talked about New York a little bit before. There's been 2 major marathons, Chicago and New York, since we last caught up. Really close finish in the men's marathon. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it was literally a photo finish in the men's marathon. The sprint up that drive through Central Park towards the finish line over the last 300 meters or so. Awesome to see. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, guys, but that was pretty awesome. Just quickly, the other one was around Safan. I've called it a failure. It wasn't a failure. She just had a poor day at the office, whether it was because she'd run Sydney so well a couple of weeks beforehand, whether it's just fatigue through the course of the year or not. But I guess I want to just get your takes on the men's finish, Safan's, I won't call it failure, but failure. And also our mate Eliud has joined our 7 Club. He's joined us as a 7 Club runner now, so 7-star club world runner. So I just get your thoughts on New York very quickly, guys. Again, I'll go around the table, maybe the opposite way, this time via Tony.
Love the men's finish. I thought it was amazing. And if you look at it really closely, the big question is, where was the finish line itself? Because the ribbon was in between the 2 timing mats before and after. So I found that quite interesting where we put that. And both runners had their feet on the timing mat and hitting at the same time. So great race. To do that at the end of a marathon is amazing. With Safan, I think she's just awesome, but she's still inexperienced as a marathon runner, and, we've seen so many runners now, and I even think back to Kelvin Kipton. It's just flat out pace-driven marathons, right? But when it comes to New York, you've got to have a strategy, right? And I still think with Safan, that strategy side is still, needs some work. Still needs to work, and I think we saw that. And maybe it was a bit much to ask her to come and back up after Sydney. But yeah, I just thought, New York, once again, it just doesn't let anyone down. And even, as we know, in the Travelling Fit Hotel, there were people that on the morning of the race were stuck in a lift, and other people who had to walk down a million flights of stairs. And you just never know what you're going to expect with New York. So to all those Travelling Fit runners in that, and sports tour runners that were caught up in that, I take my hat off to you, because I don't know how I would have responded being caught in a lift for however long it was, or walking down 25 flights of stairs.
Yep, that wouldn't have been fun. I think I would have tried to just sit on the floor of the lift and self-meditate as best I could. Tara, what are your thoughts on New York?
Yeah, look, I've got some thoughts to Tony on that finish line. I actually thought they were holding hands as they were crossing the finish line, like what you and I do. So it was interesting. But no, I agree. Safan's still got a lot to learn, and it's nice to see when professional runners don't meet the targets, because the rest of the world are like that as well. The rest of the running world, anyway, we all have bad days. So it's nice to see that no matter how much preparation you put into it, how much training you do, and if you train with 8 hours a day, or if you train 2 hours a day, you're still going to have a bad day no matter what. I did like with Eliud's 6-star medal that he got his country's colours on his ribbon rather than the normal Abbott's one. I thought that was a really special touch for him. And I loved that he had that emotion getting that 6-star medal, as much as what the rest of us did. Like, I know myself, I was bawling my eyes out when I got mine, and I'm sure everyone else in this group had very emotional feelings when they were getting their 6-star medal. So it was nice to see him have that same experience as what the rest of us get. He is human. Doesn't matter the speed.
Yep, agree. And the one thing maybe it was lost in the translation or in the way he pronounced it, but he said something like, I feel like I'm a real marathoner now, when he got his 7-star medal. And I thought, or 6-star medal, I thought, well, that's putting down other marathoners in a way who might only run 1 or 2 marathons. But I sort of got the sentiment that it's about traveling the world and just setting yourself a challenge and achieving the challenge. I think that's what he really meant. But it could have been perceived a little bit elitist in a way as well.
I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but yeah, I know what he means. Yep. You're not feeling so well, not that he'd ever feel like a fraud, but I feel like a real runner when I got my 6-star medal too. It's like, yep, I can now call myself a marathoner. So
Yeah, I think he's seen how much that 6-star medal means to people, and people strive, like us, to get that done, and I think what he's tuning into is that sentiment. So,
yes,
yeah, I love the fact he said that, Tim. I really do.
me too.
And Lucia, your thoughts quickly on New York?
I really can't add too much more to what's already been said, but cork of a race weekend, FOMO every year, so that's why I'm doing it next year.
Yep. Yep. There you go. I knew you were going to do it next year.
And I know I've already signed up for Marine Corps.
As well. 2 and 2 weekends. You can do it.
We'll see.
Yeah. Now, lastly, the other thing I noticed with the other major, Chicago, an awesome race weekend, Chicago, and again, big fields. But the times for the elites were a lot slower this year in Chicago. And I just see this weakening. I just hope this weakening of the fields, because they're doing so many races now, isn't going to affect the outcomes there. So the other bit to note there is Ruth Chepngetich, who in 2024 set the world record there, has now been officially banned for 3 years for her doping violation. Unfortunately, though, her world record will stand, along with all records prior to March 14 this year. So that is a bit of a sad one to see that. But I know we've talked about the weakening of fields before. Did you feel that in Chicago, guys?
I think because there's so many close, like Sydney, and then Chicago was literally only a few weeks later, and then New York. And the elites, and Berlin. Because the elites don't do it like us crazy people that are willing to do 2 in 2 weeks and stuff like that. So it's, but there's no other way to space them out, because I think just how popular and just everyone coming through, there's just a lot more people who just aren't at that point yet in the elite field. So I think give it a couple more years and we'll probably go back to where it was.
Yeah. Yep. All right, we're going to wrap it up there because I'm just looking at the time. So thanks for the chat, guys, and hopefully we can talk a little bit more about these things at another time. But it's that time of the week where we usually get a tip from me, but because I'm host, it's a tip from Lucia this week.
So
Lucia's tip, it stays in my ear. One step closer, the path grows clear. Tempted by fades like a fleeting breeze. Lucia's wisdom puts my soul at ease.
Lucia, what's your tip this week?
Oh, God. My tip for the week. Now, there's been a bit of controversy for people who didn't get into the Sydney Marathon via the ballot, saying it's rigged, and I can assure you it's not rigged. So there are still ways, if people really want to do and run Sydney next year, there are a number of ways to do it. So for 2026, there are 2 headline charities. One is Running for Premature Babies, and the other one is the We Run Foundation. And the We Run Foundation is the foundation arm of the Sydney Marathon. They're doing some great work. There are other charities as well, but those 2 are the main ones. And there are also tour operators in which you can go through. Our friends at Travelling Fit, they've got their Sydney packages out there. But for details on both of those charities and the tour operators, go onto the Sydney Marathon website. You'll find all the details. And the amount to race for We Run is only $3,000, which is actually not too bad. So that's my tip for the week. If people are a bit disheartened about not getting a place in Ballot for Sydney, there are still chances out there.
Yeah, and I think there's something with Porsche as well, that you can still get a Porsche experience or something that includes a marathon entry or something like that as well, because they're the vehicle sponsor, I think.
You have to buy the Porsche and then you get the free entry. Is that how it works?
I don't think it's that expensive. But again, just keep an eye online and have a look at it. So thanks for that, Lucia. This episode is about to end, but before we do that, Tony, what is on next week's show?
All right, thanks, Tim. As we said earlier, next week, Sarah Cotrona is joining us. She was on episode 10 way back in the day, talking about her 6-star experiences, and next week she'll be joining us again to discuss her experiences at Cape Town this year. From the Expo to the wind blowing on race day, well, the wind blowing in the morning of race day, and everything else in between. We're going to hear all about it. So there's so many positives still in Cape Town to hear about, but it'll also be interesting to get a runner's experience on what it felt like to have the race cancelled or pulled out from underneath you, literally an hour before you were ready to head down to the start line. Sarah is a 7-star world major runner, and she knows a thing or two about city racing. So it'll be interesting to get her take on whether or not Cape Town is ready to step up. As we keep saying, we are the only podcast with 4 7-star world major marathoners. As usual, it's an episode that you should not miss. Back to you,
Thanks, Tony. No worries. Thank you. That's it for another week of the show, guys. It's been really good to have you all back and to be doing this again on a Monday night. I've had a lot of fun tonight catching up and hearing about Tony's travel stories. We especially love making this podcast for you, our listeners. So let us know what your thoughts are by sending us a message on Instagram, Facebook, or email us at happyrunning@flyingrunner.com. That's runner, RUNR. Maybe you've got some questions about Amsterdam that you want answered. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about New York. Whatever it is, we'd love to hear about it. You can watch this episode on Spotify and YouTube or listen on your favorite major podcast platform, Apple, Amazon, and others. Every step counts. Keep running, and we'll see you next time on The Flying Runner. Until then, happy running.
Happy running.
Happy running.